What does Israel have on Trump, anyways, or the US government? Why does there seem to be this blind loyalty? They seem to attack anyone who speaks against them. Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, they all seem to, if they say anything against Israel, they seem to be like attacked. It's like a shitstorm. It's just enslaved on them. So I'm trying to figure out what is it that Israel has on the US. It has to be something. It feels like they have Trump by the balls or the US government, and it's like they can do whatever they want, and they just get, blind loyalty to Israel, and I'm just trying to figure this out. I did a video on Carbine 911, and it was made by Israel intelligence, and they have access to US surveillance systems and 911 data tracking, and actually Epstein was involved with this as well. He was one of their big supporters and investors into this company, and it's run by the ex prime minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, and these 911 data tracking systems are infiltrated throughout the US. And then when I was doing a little bit more of a deeper dive, I realized that there's another computer program that Israel has access to that kind of infiltrates the US, and it's called PROMIS. And it's capable of tracking anyone, anywhere across databases in real time. This tool was born in a smoky DOJ back room back in the 1980s. It was twisted into something that was far more sinister. Hey guys, it's Delana. Today I'm doing a deep dive into the PROMIS software scandal, where this journalist, Danny Casolaro's investigation led him to be murdered just as he was getting close to the truth. Very sad. And what is it about this software that would cause someone who's doing an investigation into it to get murdered? Apparently, it was ruled a suicide, right? However, his family and friends really deny that this was ever a suicide or at all if he was ever suicidal. They 100% think it was a murder. So again, what is it about this software company that would cause that kind of repercussions to someone who's just looking into it and doing an investigation about it? So in the early 1980s, a small tech firm called Inslaw, here's their logo, they created PROMIS. It's a prosecutorial case management software program. It was genius at that time. It could fuse desperate legal systems, tracking cases, defendants, judges, arresting officers, all into one unified tool. It linked the FBI, the DOJ, Homeland Security, local law enforcement, all together into one system. So essentially, all those different arms of the government weren't on one computer system where they could talk to each other. So if there was a local law enforcement had a criminal, they could enter into a database, but the FBI, DOJ could not access that. So once they put it into this one centralized system, all those different arms of the government could access the one file. So that's essentially what they did. So it tracked a lot of people. It could track a lot of people throughout all these systems. And most of the time, it was probably criminals if they're with the FBI, DOJ, and local law enforcement. So I'm sure they were doing some kind of criminal activity. So here is Inslaw's founder, Bill Hamilton. He boasted every use of PROMIS is tracking people, and that's his wife, Nancy Hamilton, who they started this company together. But when Inslaw pressed the DOJ for payment, a legal battle erupted. A bankruptcy court concluded DOJ agents used trickery, fraud, and deceit. Bankrupting Inslaw and commandeering PROMIS, government gave them the grants to create the software, and then Inslaw was essentially leasing back the software to them, and the DOJ just took it over without even making any payments. So essentially, they gave them the grant to start the company or make the software. They made the software, and they were supposed to be doing ongoing, obviously making it better and better. And they were going to lease, the government was supposed to lease the software back off of them. And then the DOJ just stopped paying them. And then the company ended up having to go bankrupt, and the bankruptcy court actually sided on their favor. So Inslaw was claiming at that time that the DOJ altered PROMIS, the software system, adding a trapdoor or a backdoor. The software wasn't just sold, it was weaponized. Modified versions were allegedly slipped into allied and non-aligned countries, enabling surveillance and intelligence harvesting all throughout the US. So a lot of these declassified DOJ memos later hinted a copy of PROMIS reached Israel spy master Rafi Eaton. And so again, Department of Justice just completely ripped them off. But what I found was interesting, this Israeli spy here with Ronald Reagan, and he seems to be infiltrated throughout this whole entire thing. So then we enter Robert Maxwell. He was a flamboyant media mogul with alleged ties to M16, the KGB, and Mossad. Some insiders claimed he helped peddle the doctored PROMIS software internationally, reaping massive returns. Again, people argue back and forth if he was an Israel spy. I think it's pretty evident he was an Israel spy. And which I thought was also very interesting is that he did sell this software to Austria, and Epstein had an illegal passport into Austria. Just so happens that and during the 80s, I think it was 86, 87, he was in Austria, and that's where I know for sure that, Robert Maxwell was selling this software and making huge money on this. Inslaw believed Maxwell stood at the crossroads of espionage and profit, using Israeli-linked networks to distribute PROMIS globally with U.S. intelligence. They just turned a blind eye. So, that's what I don't understand. I don't understand what the U.S. government was gaining from selling the software and then allowing a backlink into the software into United States intelligence, into all these different arms of the government. Why did they create this backdoor? Why is Israel even involved in it? Why is it being sold throughout the world? So I think that's what Danny Casolaro was also inquiring about. In 1991, investigator reporter Danny Casolaro embarked on what he dubbed the Octopus, a sprawling conspiracy connecting Iran, Contra, BCCI, which is a bank, and Inslaw. And the BCCI is a bank that apparently gave money for weapons to give to Iran. So what was the secret? He called it was like a very much a prism-like system, and it really converted a lot of these intelligence agency, and he was trying to figure out how this octopus all kind of came in together and why. Um, Castro told friends he was weeks, maybe days away from the breakthrough. He said if anything happened to him in West Virginia, it won't be an accident. Again, and then all of a sudden, he is found dead in his bathtub. And here I found on the BCCI is a Bank of Credit and Commerce International financed the Reagan's administration's secret sale of arms to Iran for profit. So again, this is infiltrating all different ends of the government, from banking to defense, intelligence. That's what he was calling this is the octopus. But he ended up dead in his bathtub in his hotel room in West Virginia. Family and colleagues said absolutely not, calling it murder, part of covering up what he was uncovering. So his family knew. He had made a point to tell his family 100%, I'm not suicidal. If something happens to me, it was murder. I watch a lot of true crime, obsessed with it. So when I kind of looked into his death, why specifically they were saying absolutely it's not a suicide, and the facts actually do show it was not a suicide. He slit both his wrists. There's not many people that commit suicide that will slit both their wrists. And then they found him in the bathtub. But who killed him? That's what I like to know. Was it Israeli? Was it the US government? There was something, he was digging up something that they were trying to hide, obviously. And I don't think it's ever come out. This PROMIS software, whatever happened to the investigation just went dead, and probably no one else wanted to dig any deeper because they'd probably end up dead too. So, how is Jeffrey Epstein linked to all this? And Giselle Maxwell, and that's Robert Maxwell's daughters. Critics speculate that the family and intelligent networks completely intertwine. Maxwell's legacies, Epstein empire, and Mossad's tentacles, they all infiltrate through this system. So, how do this all come together? How do these people have access to this software and to sell it around the world? Some private investigators hint Israel may have financed Epstein's operations, money interchangeable with espionage interest. Epstein's loyalty or leverage may have followed the same pipelines forged in the PROMIS scandal, in which this picture here is the last picture ever taken of Jeffrey Epstein before he went to jail back in 2019. And he just happens to be wearing an Israel Defense Force sweatshirt with the logo. So why does he have the IDF on his sweatshirt? 100% he was somehow infiltrated in the Israeli intelligence. There's just no way about it. Like I said, when I was doing a deep dive into the Carbine 911, who he invested well over $1 million a part of, and he hid his investment in there. He created another company in the Virgin Islands that had nothing to do with this, but that company, that his LLC in the Virgin Islands, actually gave $1 million to Ehud Barak and his company called Carbine the 911. It just seems so intertwined. And a lot of the people that worked and created this company, Carbine 911, are all ex-Israeli intelligence. And now this Carbine 911 is here in the United States, tracking, surveillance, getting data on people. I believe they're in Florida and New Mexico, and they're in the streetlights, they're in the CTV cameras. This whole Carbine 911 is infiltrated all through the United States. So they must have something on the states that is causing this blind loyalty and backing of Israel. So then we fast forward to 2025. Could the web spun decades ago explain today's tactic? US loyalty to Israel? Did PROMIS create an unbreakable back channel? DOJ Israel intelligence fusion that reshaped all political alignments. Was it a stolen software, a spy mogul, a murdered reporter, a sex trafficking scandal, and the ghost of loyalty forged into this code? So uh, we come back to the investigators kind of break down all this. It is an octopus. It is infiltrating through all the arms of the government, and they, like I said, they must have something on him. The investigation went dead. Casolaro's investigation, no one took it over. Obviously, no one wanted to die. But there, between Carbine, between PROMIS, there is so much going on that I think started decades and decades ago. And the mega group, I did another video on the mega group, how that's all infiltrated with Estee Lauder and Cohen. There's just so much backing that this, like every time we look at the situation, we're kind of looking at it today. But unless you go back decades to see where this all started, it kind of explains where we are now. But no one wants to go back and look, oh, what was going on in the 80s and the 90s. No one would think that it would have something to do with what's going on right now, but it absolutely 100% does. These companies, the connections that were made way back in the 80s and 90s, this started way back with Reagan. This was part of the Reagan. And then when Reagan came out of control, and then you get into the Clinton years, they wanted to control Clinton. So to control Clinton, they had to have something on him. And that's when Epstein started to get involved. And they knew Clinton was coming down the pipeline back in the late 80s, early 90s. So they had their eye on Clinton for a long time, a long time. So I think that Epstein was brought in and they knew probably Clinton's appetite for women. And Epstein was the perfect mix, the perfect guy to blackmail him. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think. It's very interesting how all these things just ravel into one, well, big octopus with all these different arms. It's really hard to figure out who's going where. But it just seems like there is a lot of back doors that the Israels just seem to have their hands on everything, especially with surveillance, tracking people here in the United States, the blackmailing systems. They have something. They have, I don't know if it's more or what they have, but they have a lot of intel on a lot of Americans and what's going down here, especially with Trump, Clinton. They got a lot of stuff on a lot of the leaders here in the United States. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think. Please like, subscribe, share. I'm going to keep doing a deep dive into this. There's some other high tech guys are all involved with this, like Peter Thiel. That's another one that's funding a lot of the new software that's coming out now. He's really targeting the up and coming, you know, the high tech people that are coming through the ranks right now. So he's targeting them, creating a foundation for them to come to him to keep learning how to break down these software systems and create new ones. So, anyways, please like, subscribe, share, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks. Bye.